BoogeyMan band coming round the bend. Is BoogeyMan band. Is BoogeyMan band.
Greetings, my fellow Fright Fiends. Thanks so much for stopping by the Horror Zone channel. I hope everyone's doing well. This is a BoogeyMan break time. I do these from time to time. I haven't done one since the Michael Jackson, where I talked about the movie Michael, of course, starring Jafar Jackson, directed by Anton Fuqua. I don't really do reviews of non-horror films or movies talking about non-horror films unless they're part of this BoogeyMan Break Time series, which I started in 2019. And it was something that my wife suggested because I said, I'd like to talk about non-horror stuff every once in a while. And she said, why don't you call it BoogeyMan Break Time? So she came up with the title. The first one I did was on Fletch Lives, which was celebrating its 30th anniversary at that point, which was really fun to talk about because I had gone to see that movie with my buddies, Toby and Mike, in the spring of 1989. So that was the first one I did. The last one I did before Michael, I did my final principal on location, which was back in January of this year. It was my first video to kick off 2026. And then last year I only did one, and that was on the 40th anniversary of the original Fletch from 1985. For today, I'm going to be talking about a movie that I discovered in the summer of 1988. And I just talked about it recently in a video, my last video, where I was talking about some VHS tapes I had picked up at Rasputin's over the weekend. I actually picked them up on the 23rd. The video posted on the 24th. One of the VHS tapes that I picked up was Fatal Beauty, starring Whoopi Goldberg. This is a seminal movie for me. This is a movie that I remember very vividly renting with my grandparents who lived in Manteca. It was my dad's parents, Henry and Josephine. They've been gone for a long time now, 2009 and 2011 respectively. I miss them terribly, especially now that, we just had Memorial Day yesterday. I'm recording this on the 26th of May, and my mom and I went to the cemetery to see that side of my family, my maternal grandparents who are also gone, as well as my aunt and uncles, my great-grandparents. And I really have just been getting more nostalgic for my youth, the times that I had when I was a kid. I was a very lonely kid, and I've talked about it in many videos before, and it wasn't by choice. It was just kind of by circumstance. My parents were divorced. I didn't have any brothers or sisters. My mom raised me with the help from, other family members, my grandparents, especially my maternal grandmother, my mama, who passed away last year. But in terms of friends, I was kind of isolated. I was really around adults a lot. I wasn't around younger kids very much outside of cousins and my cousin Jason, who's also not with us anymore. Or my cousin Lonnie, who lives in Maui now, who I never see anymore. And she was 7 years younger than me. So as a kid, stories, movies, books, things like that, music, that was sort of my outlet. And I think that's why I have the rooms that I have. I still have the interests that I have in the stuff that I grew up with, the stuff that really meant a lot to me. And when this movie came out, it came out in 1987. I didn't see it in the movie theater, but I talked about in that video where I showcased the tapes that I had gotten at Rasputin's. I talked about this woman coming to my school. I was in Catholic school at the time. I was in 8th grade, Mrs. Nachman. And it was right before I was going to be, it was my last year in Catholic school. I ended up going to a public high school in 9th grade. We had this woman, and I had somebody that watched my video say, was that Mrs. Case? I can't recall her name, I have to be honest with you. When I was younger, I was really bad with names. I knew faces, and I would remember people and things like that. As I've gotten older, I'm really good at remembering people's names. It's kind of something that's I'm a stickler for that. I don't like to go up to somebody and not know their name. Even if I've met them before, I like to remember names. So I have a way of sort of processing names and always remembering people's names. It's just something that I'm good at. But I do remember her coming to my school, and it wasn't the first time she had came to my school. Now, as a kid, both of my parents smoked. They smoked cigarettes, and I found out, I think from the same person, if I remember correctly, she had come to my school before when we were younger and showed us what the effects of cigarettes would do. So I'm going to say this was when I was in 5th grade, so 1984, 1985. And I remember her showing us the effects of cigarette smoke on lungs. And I remember I would take all of the pamphlets that she would give out, and I would stick them in my mom's magazines and stuff like that. And my mom said I would bring her things like cubes of butter. If she said, go get my cigarettes, I would bring her like a cube of butter or something like that. It's one of the reasons why I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. 52 years old, I've never smoked a cigarette. I can proudly say that. I have tried marijuana. I tried it when I was 22, did it a little bit, and first time I tried it was, still remember the first time I tried it was New Year's Eve, going into New Year's Day, 1997. So it was New Year's Eve, 1996, about to be 1997. I was at this party in Alameda, and my friend Mike and a bunch of other people. I was at this woman Carol's house, who I thought was really hot, and she was older than me, but she was beautiful. And we were at this house at this party, and they told me, come on, Ben, smoke. And I had the pipe in my hand with the green bud in it, and I smoked it really kind of faintly. And then over the course of the next maybe 7-8 months, I would try it here and there. One time getting really stoned, and it was like a day that I had to work, and I remember my friend Mike and I went to go see a movie. We went and saw How to Be a Player, and I thought everybody was laughing at me. This was in August of 97. He bought this giant water bong that I smoked off of, and I just didn't like that. And then in October of that year, I met kind of my first really steady girlfriend. And once I started dating her, I had no more interest in dabbling in any type of recreational marijuana use, which was the only drug I've ever tried and have no desire to ever do it again. But getting off topic, that same person, it might have been Mrs. Case. Now, I remember she came back again, and it was in 87 because this movie had already come out. And I remember she was talking to us about harder things, harder drugs, and she referenced the scene in this movie where James LaGrosse, all of the friends that he had at this party, they all overdosed on this drug called Fatal Beauty, which is the main kind of narcotic that Rita Rizzoli, the Whoopi Goldberg character, is trying to get off the streets. But before I get into a little bit more about, the film and its impact on me, I'd like to give a little bit of history about this film. And there's not a ton of information, but I really I don't know why, picking this VHS tape up and remembering renting it from that small mom and pop video store with my grandparents that summer, which was also the same summer. Funny story is that that was the same summer I rented The Principal with Jim Belushi and Louis Gossett Jr. And I've talked about it in my Principal videos. I remember I was 3 months away from going into high school, and that movie terrified me, because I had been very sheltered at Catholic school. I was with the same 30 plus kids all through from 4th grade to 8th grade. So going back into Gen Pop, if you want to call it that, with public high school, I had no idea what I was in for. And it wasn't like The Principal at all, but still, I was a little terrified by that movie. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the history of Fatal Beauty, because again, not only does this star Whoopi Goldberg, Sam Elliott, Ruben Blades, Brad Dourif, but it also is directed by horror legend Tom Holland, who would write Psycho 2. He wrote Cloak and Dagger. He wrote and directed Fright Night. He co-wrote and directed Child's Play. Huge fan of the guy. I love him, and I always think it's fascinating that he has done this film, and it's not a film that he talks about, and it's not a film that anybody really talks about anymore. Detective Rita Rizzoli is accustomed to donning costumes and going undercover to nail crooks, but she'll be required to use all of her get-ups and more when a major cocaine ring is suspected of turning out a potent new strain of drug called Fatal Beauty. With the help of her partner Carl Jimenez and a former bodyguard for a local cartel, Mike Marshak, Rita will do whatever it takes to find out who's dealing Fatal Beauty and stop them. For the cast, you have Whoopi Goldberg as Rita Rizzoli, Sam Elliott as Mike Marshak, Ruben Blades as Carl Jimenez, Harris Yulin as Conrad Kroll, John P. Ryan as Lieutenant Kellerman, Jennifer Warren as Cecile Yeager, Brad Dourif as Leo Nova, Charles Hallahan as Deputy Getz, and James LaGrosse as Zach Yeager. The movie was written by Bill Zavone, Hilary Henkin, and Dean Reichner, and was directed by Tom Holland. In May of 1986, Cher was announced to star. In July of 1986, John Milius was working on the script and intending to direct. Cher ended up dropping out to star in Moonstruck. By November, Tom Holland was attached as director with Whoopi Goldberg to star. MGM, United Artists, had wanted to cast Tina Turner in the role, but Holland fought for Goldberg. Billy D. Williams was considered for the role of Mike Marshak before Sam Elliott was cast. Filming began on February 23, 1987 in Los Angeles. During the filming of one scene, United States Secret Service agents mistook the production for a real robbery, leading to the real Los Angeles Police Department storming the set. Goldberg and Elliott originally filmed a sex scene, but it was cut from the film after poor reactions from test audiences. Both actors alleged that the scene had been cut because of anxieties about interracial sex, which the studio denied. The Motion Picture Association of America originally gave the film an X rating, but it was later reduced to an R rating on appeal. Brad Dourif's performance as the villain led to Holland casting him as Chucky in Child's Play. There is also rumors that Brad Dourif has confirmed that Whoopi Goldberg and Tom Holland clashed from day one on the set. Another thing about this film that I have always enjoyed was the soundtrack. After watching it for the first time that summer, I remember I went out and bought the cassette, which had songs by Donna Allen like Make It My Night. It had one of my favorite songs on the album, Levert's Casanova. It had Debbie Gibson, Red Hot, War, Sin City. There was so many great songs on the soundtrack. I wish I still could find my cassette tape, but I pretty much wore it out. Yeah, this was a great soundtrack that really kind of dominated the summer of 1988 for me. Another component of this film that I've always loved is the score of the film. The score of the film was done by composer Harold Faltermeyer, and if people know that name, it's because he's done so many amazing scores. At this point in my lifetime, he had done Beverly Hills Cop. The Axel Foley theme was synonymous with my youth. I loved that theme. Loved the Beverly Hills Cop films. The first two had come out at this point that this movie dropped. Yeah, I love the scores for the first two Beverly Hills Cops. He had also done Fletch at this point and would also do Top Gun. So Top Gun had already been done. He had already done Fletch in the Beverly Hills Cop films. And to hear his score in this, I mean, that was another component that really made me love this film. The film opened on October 30th, 1987, and it was not a hit. It was not a hit at all. It only made $12 million at the box office. Again, it was pushing a lot of boundaries. It was a different take on a cop film, having a female protagonist, which I thought was great. But, you know, again, this is the 80s. That was the age of, you know, Stallone. You had Schwarzenegger. Bruce Willis wasn't even, you know, kicking ass as John McClane yet when this movie came out. Plus, you know, this was originally made for Cher. It was originally a Cher film. And, you know, Whoopi Goldberg was, you know, she had sort of, you know, she was known as a comedian. She was part of Comic Relief with Robin Williams and Billy Crystal. She had also done, of course, the amazing, the beautiful, one of Steven Spielberg's best films, The Color Purple, which had gotten completely snubbed at the Oscars. And besides Color Purple, prior to Fatal Beauty, Whoopi Goldberg had done movies like Jumpin' Jack Flash. She did Burglar. But this was like the first time she was playing a cop. And of all the critics at the time, the one who was kindest to the film was the late Roger Ebert, who said it was Whoopi Goldberg's best film since The Color Purple. But most of the critics considered it a ripoff of Beverly Hills Cop. Another component to that theory for them was the fact that Faltermeyer had scored the film. Others cited a lack of chemistry and romance between Goldberg and Elliott's characters. Leonard Maltin called it inexcusably awful, with gratuitous violence and mind-boggling dialogue, using an anti-drug message to rationalize its excess. Holland later admitted that Fatal Beauty was an effort to expand his range as a filmmaker beyond the horror genre, but that Fatal Beauty was a mistake. Initially, he says today, they planned to cast Cher as Rita, but she bowed out early, and which is what I should have done. So I do have the movie on DVD, as well as just recently picking up the VHS copy of it. Yeah, I don't get it, and I didn't get it back then. I knew the movie didn't do well because as a kid, even as a 13-year-old, even going back as early as 12, I still remember constantly asking my grandparents, who got the San Francisco Chronicle, what the little man in the chair was doing for a certain movie I wanted to see. I remember the first time asking them about that was for Psycho 3. And then I would, you know, look for movies like Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, and go on from there. And usually the movies I wanted to see, that little guy was either gone, asleep, or just sitting up a little bit. He was never clapping. It surprises me that this movie didn't do well, but then again, the context of when it came out, that time, like I said, you know, that was sort of, you know, seeing a female lead in an action film which this was, even though it does have a lot of drama in it. There's more to it than just it being an action film. I just remember being taken by this story, and I loved Whoopi Goldberg. I will always love Whoopi Goldberg. I've loved her since seeing The Color Purple, but my favorite movie of hers besides that one is this one. And I've seen a lot of her movies. I mean, of course, a couple years after this, she would do Ghost and win Best Supporting Actress, which she so rightfully deserved. And she's always been somebody that reminded me of my good friend Tori's late mother, Louise. Louise was a badass. And my mom once told me a story about Louise that I think she got into a little fender bender on the freeway, and this woman called her a bitch, and Louise hauled off and socked her. And just hearing about that, you didn't fuck with Louise. She was awesome. She kicked ass, and just who she was really reminds me of the character that Whoopi plays in this film. I love the Rita Rizzoli character. I think she's very human, hiding behind sadness and regret from her life. And without spoiling the film for people who haven't seen it, there's a really poignant scene in this where she confesses to the Mike Marshak character that Sam Elliott plays a regret that's in her life that's huge, and why she is the way she is about the type of job that she has. And I think it's a terrific scene that, if they were going to nominate somebody for an award, it would be that scene that you would show, because she does it so brilliantly. And it comes after all of this chaos that has happened towards the first and middle chapter of this film, and that leads into the third act. But not only Whoopi Goldberg kicking ass, I love Sam Elliott. I've always loved Sam Elliott ever since Mask, where he played Gar. I love that guy. Everything I see him in, it just makes me smile. He's just an amazing actor. Somebody that you feel like when you see him. And I love the chemistry that he has with Whoopi Goldberg. I don't know what other critics were not seeing with their chemistry. But I think it works really well from the first moment they interact with each other. Also, Brad Dourif is terrifying in this film. He's very over the top, very manic. Again, he's pushing a drug in this, and him and his buddy, they have these Uzis that they're just shooting up shit. There's a huge final shootout at this strip mall at the end that I think is just still amazingly choreographed and well done, and very, very gory, and I love it 100%. James LaGrosse, again, he's good in this for the small role that he has. Ruben Blades is another actor I absolutely adore and love him in this. The late Charles Hallahan, who of course played Norris in The Thing and was the boss on the show Hunter. I've always loved him, and he's great in this as well for the small role that he has. Also, Harris Yulin, who we just lost last year, and he was in so many great films that I loved growing up, and I love him in this as Conrad Kroll. Just does a great job again. The rapport between him and Goldberg and the scenes that they're in. But yeah, I don't get the hate that this film got, and like I said, this film has everything for me. It has, I think, a very human performance in Whoopi Goldberg and the character that she plays. She's very relatable, and she's talked down to by all these guys, yet she holds her own and gives them their shit right back. And she just does it so effortlessly, and it doesn't feel like it's forced or over the top. I think it's one of Tom Holland's best films. And, it's like everybody knows him for the types, the horror movies that he's done. He's done Langoliers, he did Thinner, he's done so many great films, but nobody talks about this film, and it surprises me, because just in the age that we're in now, where this is no longer taboo, an interracial relationship is no longer taboo, which is sad that it ever was taboo. But I think people should give this movie a chance. If you haven't watched it, seek out Fatal Beauty. It brings me so many great memories thinking about it, and I still remember just bumping that song Casanova by Levert with my headphones on, riding my bike. I would listen to it. That summer I was in a play, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I remember always having my Walkman with me and walking back and forth between my condo that my mom and I lived in, or riding my bike out to my grandparents, my mom's parents who lived in town where I lived, or just getting the soundtrack for the first time that summer. It was one of the soundtracks of my youth. It was the soundtrack for my summer of 1988, and I loved it. I love Whoopi Goldberg in this. I love everybody involved with this film, and I think it deserves a lot more praise than it got, because it did have a very strong anti-drug message, and it's a message that worked. It worked on me. Yes, I tried a couple things, but I didn't try them until I was in my 20s. As a kid, I stayed away from drugs. I was offered them my freshman year in high school. I was offered them right by my locker one day, and I didn't want them. My mom told me one time she didn't think I was street smart, and I think it had to do with the fact that I was sheltered, but she sheltered me. And that's no dig on her. That's just the way life was. She was a single parent. She was trying to protect me. But I was street smart. I was smart enough to say no to things. Yes, I tried a couple things as I got older, but I never wanted to do anything, any type of hard drug, cocaine, heroin, any of that shit. I barely even drank. Like I tried beers and things like that at one point, but I don't drink at all. Every once in a while I'll have a glass of wine maybe, but even that I don't like. It takes me like 2 hours to drink a glass of wine. So there is a strength in me that kept me away from a lot of shit that hurt a lot of people that I know that got hooked on things. And that's one thing I'm proud of myself, and I'm grateful that I never did succumb to that temptation. It just didn't interest me. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but that's one thing I'm grateful for. And I think it was this movie because, again, very young when that woman might have been Mrs. Case. Again, I don't remember her name, unfortunately, but I do remember very vividly her talking to us about drugs and the dangers of drugs and referencing this movie. And it stayed with me. And this movie is not preachy. It is action-packed. It's got some great set pieces, got some great characters. But in the end, it has a great message about the damage that drugs can do to somebody and how it can destroy people and destroy families. So I think people should give Fatal Beauty a chance. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. I think it's very underrated. And if you are a fan of the film, let me know the first time you saw it. If you don't like it, share your thoughts there as well. I mean, I'd love to just hear anything about this film. And I know I've been showing the DVD a lot, but I'm really happy that I found this. It really takes me back to that summer of 1988. And the fact that I rented this as well as The Principal that same week, I was at my grandparents'. And we also went and saw Rambo 3 because my grandfather loved Rambo. I just miss a lot of these people. I miss a lot of these people, and I wouldn't be who I was because without my grandparents, both my maternal and my paternal, I wouldn't be who I am. My grandfather, my dad's father, Henry, really loved to watch movies. My mom's father, not so much. He liked certain kinds, but my grandfather, my dad's father, would watch anything. We watched all the Rocky movies. He told me about Rocky IV coming out and that Apollo was going to die in it. Like 3 months before the movie came out, he heard that Apollo was going to die in it. And I remember him telling me that at an Italian picnic that we had because he was part of an Italian club. And but renting movies like this and The Principal and him taking me to see Rambo First Blood Part 2 and Rambo 3 and Platoon and Johnny Be Good with Anthony Michael Hall. My grandparents were awesome. Both sets, and I miss them all terribly, and that's kind of what these videos are now. I think it's just to keep the memories alive. So sorry to get a little long-winded and emotional. I think that's how it happens when you get older, but yes, check out Fatal Beauty. Fantastic movie, underrated, one of Tom Holland's best films. I think he did a great job. I hope maybe he thinks differently about this film, but even if he doesn't, I would just love to say thank you for making this film. Thank you for everybody involved in this film because it really means a lot to me, and it led to, I think, me making some really good life decisions as well as just having a good time with some great entertainment. So thank you all for watching this episode of BoogeyMan Break Time, talking about Fatal Beauty. 1987 comedy, action, drama. It's got everything. So let me know what you guys think about the movie down in the comment section below. Would love to hear from everyone. And as always, thanks so much for stopping by the Horror Zone channel. I hope everyone's doing well. I'll talk to you again real soon. Take it easy. Stay scared as always. Peace.